Hey guys, how you doing? It's Rogway here, and it's time for the weekly tutorial. And hope you guys are doing well. Hope you're staying healthy and safe. This week we are looking at the organization of data. It sounds really boring, I know, but if you think about what a graphic designer's job is, a lot of times we are going to be tasked with taking somebody's data, somebody's information, and presenting it to them in a pleasing way. And there's a lot of ways we can do this. There's a lot of ways we can kind of organize ourselves through text and through pictures and through graphics and all sorts of stuff to make something that looks really nice. But I want to show you an example, a perfect example. Especially for nowadays, very relevant. Let's say I wanted information on this coronavirus, and I wanted to know what I could do to prevent the spread or to prevent me getting it. So let's say I go on and I look up coronavirus spread. And so I go to a page like CNN here, and I read and I read and I read and I read, and I realize that even in a short article like this, I have to read it all to kind of get the gist of it, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with reading. Reading is awesome, but it can be done in a more visually pleasing way, where all this information about how to prevent the spread of this virus could be presented in something like this, which is an infographic. Okay? And so when you look at something like this, which could easily have the same information as that article I just showed you. Okay, I didn't actually read this article, I have no idea. But the information will be the same. It's just that the infographic gives you a lot of information in a very short amount of time. So, for example, splash some water on your hands. It's got a picture of somebody putting water on their hands. It's very visual. And there's a saying, which I'm sure you guys have all heard a million times, a picture says 1,000 words. And as graphic designers, we are looking for ways to share information in a visually pleasing way. All right? Anybody can copy and paste data and just throw it, onto a page or into a website or whatever. But somebody with actual creative and, creative ability, graphic design ability, will be able to take that information and turn it into something that looks good. I'm not saying that this looks good necessarily, but this is very relevant to what we're talking about, the whole reason we're all home right now. So this is called an infographic. And if I was to go into my browser and just search up infographic, I would see tons of these and tons of examples of these. So here's one for creative activities, and you can see that all of these are laid out in a way that is very visually pleasing, and even though there may be a lot of information inside of these things, the way that it's organized in a really visually pleasing way using symbols and icons makes it much easier to absorb that information. And this is why a lot of people will hire graphic designers to do these types of things, because they don't know necessarily how to create or how to lay out something like this. All right, and so today we're going to talk about how we can create appealing looking infographics and how we can organize data. All right? And what I would like you guys to do, if you get a chance, I would like you guys to check out the handout on symbolism, because symbolism is basically what all these little visual icons are, and it talks a little bit about what symbolism is and why it's important to us that we recognize symbols and images much quicker than we're willing to read text. Okay, so let's create some simple infographic based on data that we have. So in the week 9 tutorial here, or whatever week we may be on, I'm on week 9 right now, but in week 9, we're going to take a look at the tutorial that is talking about data. Okay, and we're going to use some data from YouTube. And like I said, I could easily just copy and paste this data into a InDesign document or an Illustrator document and be done with it. But perhaps we want this data to be more interesting, because a lot of people find data to be pretty boring. Let me just show you what this data is talking about. All right. I'll just zoom in on it a little bit so you guys can see. Here we go. It's all about YouTube. And so here's the stats. And obviously, if we were going to make an infographic on YouTube, we might have a whole page of stats. So first one is 70% of YouTube traffic comes from outside of the US. Here we got information on the average number of subscribers daily. So 3.4 million in 2019, 2.8 in 2018, 2.2 in 2017. And the third piece of data is that over 500 hours of video is uploaded every minute to YouTube. Okay, so we got 3, I would call like each one of this is one, this is one, and this is one. So we got 3 pieces of data here that we're going to try to visually represent. Okay? Because again, people may not want to read this type of stuff. So in the tutorial folder, you'll find the data file. You'll also find a file called symbols. These are the symbols right here. I'm going to drag symbols to Illustrator. Okay, and so symbols is going into Illustrator. There it is. These are the symbols we're going to use for this infographic. And I don't know how many of you have ever played around with this or know about this, but Illustrator has an amazing set of tools for creating data, graphs and charts and all sorts of stuff. And we're going to look at that. And again, not too many people use it, but it's really powerful. So let's start a new document. We'll go new, and we'll create a print document. And it's going to be letter sized, and we're going to just change, we're going to change the orientation to landscape. Okay, and we're going to hit create, and there's our page. Okay, and so the very first thing we're going to do with this is we're going to take the first piece of data. So I want you to also open by double-clicking data. We're going to take this first fact, I guess, this first piece of data. That's 70% of YouTube traffic comes from outside the US. And I'm going to just paste it in there. And there it is. Oops, don't want to stretch the text. I'm holding shift. So let's look at what it's saying. 70% of YouTube traffic comes from outside the US. Okay? 70%. Okay, that's a clue as to what type of graphic we're going to need. One other thing we can do before we start is we can go to symbols. Let's just grab this gray background. I'm just going to copy it and paste it. Throw it into the background. I'm just going to go to Object, Arrange, send it to the back. Now we got that stat in front. I want to change this text into something that looks a little bit more visually appealing. And you may not have this exact font on your computer. It's okay. You can pick whatever you think looks good. I'm going to look for, where are we here? I'll go with something pretty simple here. I was hoping I have Helvetica New. Oh, I do, good. Something like Helvetica New Condensed Bold. a nice font for, it's pretty simple, but it's just basically a nice font. Okay, so I'm going to set that to white so I can see it nicely. Okay, so 70%. Well, there's a lot of things we can do with percentage, but the one that comes to mind right away for me is something like a pie graph. And if we want a pie graph, we want something to show 70%, then like I said, in Illustrator, there's all sorts of great charting and plotting data creation tools. And they can be found, at least in my Illustrator, they can be found down here in the three dots. I could add them to my toolbar if I want. But I'm just going to click these three dots. And you're going to see that about halfway down, you've got all of these graphing tools. Okay? And so for this one, we're going to actually create a pie graph. Okay? And so with the pie graph tool selected, I am going to, oops, got to add that by dragging it. Okay, so click and drag it out. Okay, you can also drag more to it. Like you can drag all of these, sorry, I should have did this first. You could drag all of these into one tool so that when you click and hold, they're going to be available to you. Okay, so I'm going to click and hold now to what I added, pie graph. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create an area that I want the pie graph to be in. It doesn't really matter. I would hold shift so it's a perfect square. And it's going to create a circle. And right now the circle is 1. So basically a hole, which we can see the pie graph only has one thing in it. So what we want is we want 70%. So instead what we'll do is we'll go 70. And I hit tab, and the other one will be 30, right? And I click check, and now you'll see that the dark area is 70, and this little area here is 30%. So it created it for us automatically. We could add as many things as we want if it doesn't make much sense, but let's say we wanted another one that had 10, then it would give us that sliver. It would keep breaking this apart into smaller pieces. We'll go back to that. Okay, so 70% of traffic comes from outside the US. And so we're going to close that off. And now that we have this pie graph, while it's in this sort of format, we can always edit the data. We can always go and change it if we wanted to. But what we're going to do is we're going to take this pie graph, and we're going to ungroup it. And it says after you ungroup it, you will no longer be able to access the information that created the graph, which is fine. We already know it's going to be right, so we're going to hit OK or yes. I ungroup it a few times. Looks like there's a bunch of groups in there. Basically, I want to get it down to just its pieces that it's created. So the only piece we want, I'm going to delete the 30% piece. The only piece we want is the 70% because that's what the data is saying, 70%. And we're going to get rid of the stroke on it because it has a black stroke. And we're going to change the fill color to white. Okay, so there it is. So we now have a circle that's 70% filled. Now if we left it like this, it's pretty boring. It doesn't look very good. It's pretty plain. So we'll add more to it to make it a little more visually pleasing. First thing you should do, sorry I should have did this earlier, is this background. It's going to be annoying because we're going to keep clicking it. So either you can drag it down to a lower layer, or you could just select it like I did and just go to Object and lock it, lock selection, so we can't move it anymore. So there it is, 70%. But let's combine it now with a graphic. So we're going to go back to symbols. This symbol here of the world probably makes the most sense because it's saying that 70% of the traffic on YouTube comes from outside of the US. So let's select the world, let's copy it, And let's just paste it in here. And we're going to put the, look at that. I don't know if that was intentional. I don't think it was, but because I didn't do that on purpose. Now the globe is going to fit over that. And if yours doesn't fit perfectly like mine did, that's okay. Just scale it down so it does. Okay. That looks pretty stupid because the globe is overlapping the 70%. So what we could do is we could select the 70%. And I'm just going to use the arrow keys just to move that into good position there. And I'm going to take that 70% fill. I'm going to go to Window, and I'm going to go to Transparency. And I'm going to bring down my transparency to about 70%. Like that. All right, something like that. You know, we could go a little higher. Doesn't really matter. And you can see that, I mean, even if I brought this to the front, bring it to the front, it's not going to change anything because it's blending with the white globe underneath it. You know, I could also try a color maybe like, I could try a red. Something like that. Okay, that maybe looks a little better. I don't know. But I'm not too worried about it. It looks good now, okay, because we've got the 70% plus we got the globe. So it's basically explaining this point perfectly, in my opinion. I'm just going to take this, I'm going to put it onto 2 lines. I'm going to center it. Again, this is just to make it look a little more visually pleasing. I'm just kind of guessing at centering it here. I should actually be going perfect, but that's okay. So now we've got this first piece of data in a nice visual way. I'm going to select it all with the selection tool. I'm going to drag everything. I'm going to move it down somewhere around here. And we got our first piece of data. Okay? And as you can see, that looks a lot better than just reading the text. In my opinion, hey, maybe you've got your own, maybe you got a different way of doing it, that's fine too. Next piece of information, there's a lot here actually. Average number of subscribers daily on YouTube per year, and it's got all these numbers. So I'm going to take this piece of data, and again I'm going to just paste it into Illustrator. Nice little trick if I want this data to match that, or if I want this text to match that text, you just take the eyedropper, shortcut is I, and you can click the text that you want it to become. And it takes on all the exact same characteristics as that text that you clicked. So for this one's going to be a little different because we've got 3 pieces of data within this one sort of fact, I guess. So we've got 3.4 million, 2.8 million, 2.2, and we got some years listed here, right? What are we talking about? We're talking about average number of subscribers daily on YouTube. So if you think about this sort of data, which chart is going to work best? It's going to be a bar graph, okay? Now, I mean, you could use a column, you could use other things as well, but a bar graph, in my opinion, is going to show this data nicely. So how can we do that? Again, we click the bar graph, we drag the area we want it to take, sort of the space we want it to take up. And here what we'll do is we don't have to necessarily use million, okay, because we could represent that in a different way. So let's say the first one is 3.4 because it's 3.4 million. The second one is 2.8 million. And the third one is 2.2 million. And we hit check mark. Boom! This gives us kind of that chart that we were hoping for. This is 2019, 2018, 2017, right? And I'm just going to close that off. And I'm going to take this chart, I'm just going to move it up a bit, and we want to be able to edit it, obviously. We want to be able to change it so it looks maybe a little more visually pleasing. All right? So what we'll do now is is now that we've got the bars at the right length, we know that it's visually correct. Now we got to make it look nice. We got to dress it up and make it look nice. So we'll take our data, we'll ungroup it. Yeah, we know we're going to lose our editing capabilities. We're going to have to ungroup it a bunch of times. I don't know why. I guess every piece of it is grouped. Yeah, okay. There we go. First thing I want to do is I want to get rid of this left line, just because I feel like it looks weird. I'm going to take these three, so I held shift, and I'm going to take the stroke off of all of them. Okay. Along the bottom here, I'm going to select all of these. And I'm going to actually group them back together. Maybe move them up a bit, because I don't like them all sort of separated like that. We know this is the bar for 2019, and we know that it's 3.4 million, right? Down here, we don't have any indication of what these numbers are representing right now. So what we need to do is we need to take our text tool, and we need to say, we can even say in millions, or we could just say per, yeah, just million is fine. Per million. Yeah, per million. Okay, that makes sense. Eyedropper, take that text. Actually, I should have set all of this to white before I grouped it, so we'll go Object Ungroup. We'll select each block holding Shift. And I'm going to set it to white so it looks consistent. Same with these lines. I'm holding Shift. This is a little bit painful because we got to go in and select everything manually, but it'll look better visually. Set it to white. Maybe I'm going to increase the stroke a little bit. I went up to 2 points. So that's a little bit nicer. And the reason I'm going with red is because red is sort of YouTube's color, as we'll see later, right? I think most of you know that. So the first bar, I'm actually going to set it to red. So I got it selected. I'm just going to my color guide, or just my color. I got to make sure I'm on my fill. Set it to CMYK. To make red really quick, you just pull magenta and yellow all the way up, and that may give you a red. Now it might be a little intense. We can change it after. No big deal. I can even select it and pull down the opacity if I want. That's kind of cheating though. That'll give me a lighter red similar to that one. Okay, doesn't matter for now. So next we want to show what these bars represent. So we're going to take each year. So I'll take 2019. I will copy it. You know what? It's easy enough to just type it in. But I'll take 2019. Go like this, right? Hold Shift. Then I'm going to hold, let's say, Option. I'm going to drag with holding Shift, copy that, and here I'm going to copy it there. So I got 19, 18, 17, right? And the bars are represented by the millions. Okay. And we're going to get rid of this information here for now. We could put this on top. Actually, no, let's put this down here. Average number of daily users, daily subscribers on YouTube per year. Either way, you know what? Either way, it doesn't matter. We could put it up here. Okay, we could put it up here. Either way, it doesn't really matter. I don't like changing the size smaller because I want to keep it consistent with everything else. So for now, I'll just kind of put it like that. We'll change it up. Now, again, we're just using the bar tool that creates this data for us, but to make it, again, a little more interesting, we can go back to symbols and take maybe this guy. He represents a subscriber. we can copy that and paste it, and maybe each bar has this little dude at the end of it. Okay, so I'm just holding Option and copying this little guy to the end of each bar. And again, guys, I'm doing this quick. You know, if I was doing this seriously, I'd be going much more careful than what I'm doing right now. Okay, so then now again, I can select all of this if I wanted to, and I could just maybe scale it down a bit so it doesn't take up quite so much room. I could put this onto 2 lines if I wanted to, something like this. And I'll still leave it up top, even though I don't like the way that looks. I would probably change that up. But okay, there's that piece of information in a visual way. All right, that being interpreted in a visual way. For the last one, I'm going to just do a real simple little thing here. The last piece of data is over 500 hours of YouTube video uploaded every minute to YouTube. So we'll just take that stat and copy it in, paste it in here. I think you guys get the point of how this works and why we're doing it. Again, I'm going to take I and I'm going to copy that text, over 500 videos, put it onto 2 lines maybe, something like that. For this one, I really don't need any sort of data, a graph created, I don't think. I mean, I don't have it comparing to anything. So it's just over 500 hours. So I could do something like maybe taking the clock, copying the clock, putting it in here, right? Something like this. I just want to make sure it's the same size as the globe, and it looks like it is. Oops. I'm going to put that into here, like so. And maybe just to make it a little more interesting, I'll take this out, actually, 500. We'll get rid of that. Oops. I'll just make it say hours of video uploaded, and I'll paste back in Command V, or even just type it, take 500, and maybe put it over top of the clock. And again, you know, like typography is a huge thing here. Typography is huge in all parts of design, and I'm not really spending the amount of time I should be to make this really nice visually typography wise. I'm just kind of putting it in quickly, but I would spend more time making it look better. So over 500, I'm just going to adjust my leading and get that closer together. Just a little adjustment there, something like that, to kind of where I'm happy with it. And I'm going to just hold Shift and get that to go over the clock. And it says over 500 hours of video uploaded every minute. Now this one I could probably bring the transparency down a little bit so it's not so intense. But you get the idea anyways, that what I'm trying to stress here is that the whole reason we work as graphic designers, the whole reason we're hired as graphic designers, is to create things that are going to look visually pleasing. And a lot of times it's going to be boring data. It's going to be, you know, information about a company, or date and time of an event, or in this case, statistical type data. And our job, again, is to make it interesting, right? Make it interesting. And so you're going to take that information, that data, and you're going to make it look as good as possible. The last thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to take the YouTube logo, I'm going to copy it. Just going to paste it up here near the top. Oops, there it is. I'm going to just call this YouTube, and I'm going to take this, I'm going to hold Option, I'm going to say, oops, geez, I'm tired today. Did you know 2019? Even though technically it's 2020 right now, I'm going to just say, did you know 2019? Because this was actually from 2019 stats. So chances are it probably even went up more in this year because YouTube is quite popular. Okay, so that is that. That is done. Now again, if I was making this into a huge poster that was going to maybe show tons of, stats about YouTube, well, these graphics could become smaller and you can use your space wisely. And the more you have on there, obviously, the more it's going to look sort of finished and polished. And so going back to what I started saying right at the start, the whole point of the infographic, the whole point of why you would want to do this is because people don't like to read long articles, about, unless they want really detailed information, but most people just want to look at things at a glance and get the information quickly. And that's what an infographic's purpose is. It's to basically convey a lot of information in a very sort of simple to digest, simple to understand manner. And like I said, use Illustrator's tools for that. They give you that so that you can create simple data-driven graphics. And like I said, what I'd like to see you guys do is when you have information, rather than just slapping it into your design, give it these sort of graphic elements to go with it to make sort of the person looking at it be more engaged with the information that you're trying to share. Anyways, make sure you save that. Hopefully you got through that okay. Till next time, thanks for watching.